Greetings, fellow Empyreans. I am Ashtarothi, and this is the EVE Universe Show's continued coverage of the CSM 17, this time with Keacte.
Greetings.
That's close enough, right?
Yeah, you're on the
Excellent.
on the nose.
All right. Well, how's it going, my friend?
Yeah, it's all good. It's a nice evening here, nice and sunny. Absolutely lashed it down earlier. Managed to get not too wet on the way home. So yeah, all good.
And I think
ready and raring to go.
Yeah, you're one of those weird cases where your in-game name is not the name that most people probably know you by, if they know of you. So
yes,
you are more widely known as just Fun Inc., which is both your handle and also your organization. Is that correct?
Yeah, correct. On Twitch, I kind of set it up as a corporate account originally. So I just went with the corp. Obviously, the corp is Fun Inc. The tagline ticker is even better with friends, because Eve is even better with friends. See what I did there? But I just went for the handle on Twitch and sort of social media across the board as Fun Inc. Just for ease, really.
So I have here your super serious, hardcore, informative ad. We'll start this to let it set the tone. All right, so super serious, hardcore video. Super serious hardcore dude. No. So you are really big in the NPSI community. Is that, I mean, that's the short of it, right? That's the one sentence tagline.
Yeah, it's kind of, I'm not going to say we're the biggest group or anything like that, because we're not. But we kind of started off, originally I started the corporation sort of 2018, there or thereabouts. And in the process sort of set up the NPSI community in the process. So we've been going sort of 4 years as a corporation and sort of 3 years probably as an NPSI kind of community. Last year I set up the NPSI community gateway, which you've just seen obviously the advert for. It's like super serious spaceships. It's the sort of thing that a 42-year-old man gets up to in his study at night.
Nice. So just in case people may not be aware, why don't we start with what is NPSI and why does it matter to EVE Online?
Right. NPSI in its rawest sense is not purple shoot it. So by association, if there's anybody on grid with you that isn't purple, they're a valid target. So basically you fleet up with friends. By association, by default, they're purple on your overview and obviously in fleet. And you basically go out hunting baddies. We set up the community calendar sort of about 18 months ago. We've got 15 groups on the calendar, and we sort of run basically NPSI community roams. We do them sort of 2-3 times a week, depending on sort of content. We cater for new bros to veterans. Myself, I've actually played EVE since 2004. And interesting pop fact is that since 2007, which is when I kind of got into PvP, there is only 1 month in that whole time to the current date where I have registered no kills. So I've been active the whole time. I've never taken any time away from the game. It's the only game that I play, and it's the only character that I have. So I don't have ults other than like within secondary slot, tertiary slot. But I don't use them. It's like trade ult and so on and so forth.
So anytime I have somebody who's been in the game for as long as you, especially nowadays, I want to ask them, like, is there a time in your opinion that was like the best time for EVE Online mechanically, not just like the amount of the population, but is there a time is there some sort of glory day of EVE Online in which the game itself was in a better state that we have lost, or are we actually moving forward, in your opinion?
In my opinion, I'll be honest with you. I think personally, with NPSI specifically now, it's in as vibrant a state as it's, I believe, ever been. Pretty much every roam, and guys in the chat can attest to this. I know Skip's watching, I know Ms. Demeanor's watching. We pretty much destroy in excess of 5 billion every roam that we go out. We have thinner roams where we might destroy 2 billion. If we scratch anything less than that, I would be surprised, and it is a very, very rare occurrence. I've literally, if I reach over to my desk, I've got modern technology post-it notebook,
Nice.
which is basically every roam I do a tot up, so I've literally got it there. And when I look down, 3.6, 2.2, 2.1, 6.8, 4.8, 7.3. I mean,
How
we've
long
destroyed.
are these roams?
It depends. My roams are historically long,
Okay.
just purely on the basis of I only actually sort of game a couple of times a week, just real life commitments and so on. But I set aside sort of 5 hours, and I will FC for 4 to 5 hours. So I'll start sort of 1900, finish invariably. I think the longest roam I've done is sort of 7 hours straight back to back, like 2 bios in between sort of thing. I think the guys in the chat will remember, there was actually one roam that we destroyed 30 billion in one night. That was just one night on one roam.
What is your main content? What is your major activity that you're doing?
Right. It's I'm not going to say small gang. It's probably medium gang. That's probably a fair assertion. Historically, I love solo. I've got 1,000 solo kills, best part, and small gang, Pico gang is where my heart really lies. However, what I do on a daily basis in terms of the fleets that we run is more sort of mid gang, so probably sort of 30s, late 20s, that sort of thing, up to sort of 40. That's probably about the core. My doctrine that I run is something called shrink wrapped. It's basically combat interceptors, combat raptors generally, and it's fast, furious. It's all about grid, messing around on grid, getting probes. Sorry.
Is this low sec roams, null sec roams?
No. Sorry, it's null sec. I should clarify.
Right.
It's all null sec. Occasionally we can go through null sec, low sec, and
so you're hunting for like Ishtars or what exactly is your normal?
We don't
Where's
specifically
come from?
Right. We don't specifically go out looking for just like lone targets. Ideally, in an ideal world, I want to go out and get us a fight. Like we'll go out and get fleet fight. The longest fleet fight I've actually had was on our 300th roam that we ran probably about 18 months ago. And it was about an hour and a quarter long, literally just start to finish, just small scale skirmishes, reset, small scale skirmish, reset, that kind of thing. So it actually lasted. We're on that same grid for about an hour and 20 minutes, I believe it was. So wow. It's insane. And what you've got to remember is that this is using interceptors. So Raptor sort of 250 DPS, loads of E-War. So you've got loads of scrams, webs, dams, tracks, paints, yada yada yada. So people just look at it and go, yeah, we can take that on, and they just throw stuff at it. And it's honestly, we've had so much fun with it. I mean, we've done, I believe it's 153 roams using this doctrine, and we're at 920 billion ISK destroyed, 925 billion ISK destroyed. We're going to hit 1 trillion ISK in the next, I reckon, probably about 2 months.
But who's counting?
It's on the post-it note.
Yeah, that's fair. So I feel like we explained what NPSI is, but why is it important to EVE Online?
Right. Why is it important? It's a very, very good question. And I'll say it's kind of twofold. NPSI creates content for people, and people logging in creates kills, and it creates content for other people. And so just by association, just by having people online, having people out hunting for targets, looking to get into trouble, looking to harass people, so on and so forth, not literally harass people, obviously, it's important because it's the breeding ground for new players. It's the breeding ground for people that want to get good at something. When you learn, there's a sense of accomplishment in you as a person. So as you learn, you get more motivated to do things, and it's experience-based learning. If you see what I mean. So by putting somebody into a situation where they actually learn things, it creates that desire to go back and do it. And that's what I feel NPSI. That's why NPSI is so important. It's pretty fragile, and it's pretty precious. We basically, to all intents and purposes, there are people that's all they do in game. They will log on for a fleet, they'll just X up in a channel, and they'll hop onto comms and just go out for 2 hours, and then they will log off for a couple of days, and then just they won't return to the game until another fleet that motivates them to, kind of to log in, and go out for.
Rough guess. What ratio of the people that you work with are like part of another established organization, they just come with you to blow off steam or to go get good content? How much of them are like, you would say, like professional MPSIers, like you were just talking about, and how many of them are relatively newer players that are using this as an opportunity to get exposure to PvP?
I would say, if I'm honest, as an aside, I actually run the Ancients, which is an MPSI alliance. So we've got 300 members, and these are just dudes that are in their own like holding corps, their own I want to say tax evasion corps, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And you know they join the alliance to just do PvP and just MPSI PvP. That's all they do. I would say probably in the region of 40%, probably 50% of the people, 40%, 50% of the people that come along to the fleets, it's all they do. It's literally they log on for a fleet. You don't see them for a couple of days. They'll log back on. It'll be another fleet. They don't generally do some of the other bits and pieces within Eve that perhaps like Null Sec block people do. Ratting, mining, missioning, that sort of stuff.
Okay, and then so how much of the remaining percentage, the remaining 50%, is like newer players trying to get exposed to it, or groups from other, or people from other groups that are just trying to get a good fight?
I would say, and Kushal Adron, who's actually in Fun Inc., she's one of the FCs in Fun Inc., who's also going for CSM. She focuses on the kind of new bro kind of aspect of it. So we run a weekly, fortnightly new bro roam, and we get probably in the region of about 3 or 4 new players a week, there or thereabouts. So I'd probably say about 10%, between 5 and 10% each fleet will be a new character or a new person to PvP, not necessarily a new character. I know there's subtle differences. I know when I started PvP and my character was 3 years old, so I got into it quite late in, by association, if you see what I mean, in terms of my kind of character age. However, there are people. I mean, we've run roams, sort of new bro roams, with people that are less than 6 hours old. They've literally created the character. Their friend has told them to create a character, and we've kind of muddled through to get them a fit that works and get a proper, like a true alpha fit. Something that's 6 hours in game.
I call them day zero fits, right? Like,
yeah.
You assume that you only have the 1 million free SP from a buddy code.
Yeah, exactly. It's that kind of thing. It's less than a few hours sort of training sort of thing.
Right. Yeah. Do you think that MPSI fleets are a good place for new players to get to integrate into the game, or do you think that somebody should learn PvP before joining an MPSI fleet?
I think it allows you to try and integrate into a fleet. It allows you to understand the fleet movements, the kind of understanding the instructions and so on and so forth. I wouldn't recommend it at day one, because there are certain things that you will need to learn, like how to use gates, aligning, what I mean by starburst, what I mean by burn to gate, and certain things like that. But certainly with our new bro roams that we run sort of periodically every 2-3 weeks, you will learn that information there within one roam, a few hours, like 2-hour roam sort of thing.
Is there any good examples of things that CCP, or rather the game itself, doesn't teach people or doesn't expose people to, that you feel like it should be done by CCP and not necessarily rely on players? Like, is there mechanics or concepts that you feel you would like people to be exposed to during the MPE before they even get to you?
It's another good question. I've kind of it's one of my big bugbears. Coming from my original corp that I was in was Agony Unleashed. I assume you know Agony Unleashed?
I have heard of them. They used to have a very popular class that would teach people
Indeed
all of the specifics of PvP.
And that's exactly what I was going to mention. Obviously, Agony Unleashed formed in, I forget what year, I think it was 2004 or something like that, and basically lasted for until 2018, shut the doors 2018, and they ran something called a PvP basic university basic course. We actually had about 10,000 graduates from that. With each graduation you would have, or session, you would have a roam where you'd put into practice what you've learned, kind of thing. Now, where I'm going with this is that obviously recently with the whole Eve Academy thing that obviously CCP are kind of rolling out, I absolutely love it, what they've done. I think it's fantastic. I think there's so much more to come from it. sad thing is, it's 20 years too late. There's so much player-based literature, player-based videos, so on and so forth, that really what we've done, or what CCP have kind of done in the process, is like throw the new player under the bus and then rip the carcass up again, and then throw them under the bus again, and then rip the carcass. Do you see what I mean? It was a very, going back 18 years ago, the MPE was incredibly sparse, if that makes sense. And
Sure.
I think
here's your here's your ship, now fuck off.
Yeah, exactly. Click the button, sling your hook, mate. Sort of things. Now, good luck. But I suppose my point is, and this is where I was going with this, is that with the advent of that, I think it's in a lot better place. So I'm hoping, and this is kind of another aspect that that I kind of want to safeguard, is that new player retention is a huge issue. Let's face it, how many people, I'd love to see the metrics of how many people last 3 hours, last 2 hours, last 1 hour, that kind of thing.
They gave them years ago, and they were very dismal.
Yeah, I think CCP Ghost, I think he did a presentation back 2016 or 15 at Fanfest, his first Fanfest, actually, if memory serves me correctly. And it was the first hour. The first hour is absolutely critical. If we can get that first few hours of the first kind of, I don't want to say arc, that's not the right word, but I think you know what I mean when I say that, the first kind of visitation to Eve by any new player licked, I think you will get people staying for longer. If they stay for longer, they progress, and as they progress, they're going to get more into it. They're going to unlock new ships for them to fly, so on and so forth, and it allows them the ability to develop, basically. And people want to develop, they want to learn, they want to get good.
Yeah, I feel like, so I've tried to explain this before in a lot of different ways, but I think that you just helped me kind of conceptualize it in my head, where I like to say, keep them there long enough to gain a sense of mastery. But so the problem is, can you keep the game interesting without knowing how to play it long enough for someone to learn how to play it, right? Because if they lose interest in it before they actually gain knowledge, and remember, they don't have the knowledge, so somebody without knowledge has to find Eve interesting enough, long enough, and be led to the answers clearly enough to then become knowledgeable. Then that person can decide whether or not Eve is for them.
Yeah, and I think that's an incredibly valid point, is that that in itself takes time, and it's whether, because Eve is so huge, it will take time to progress through those steps, and people are fickle creatures nowadays, unfortunately. What sort of age? You're sort of my age, I'd imagine.
I'm scraping 40.
So I'm north of you. I'm 40, coming up 42. My point is that people are really fickle. In the past, we used to, spend a lot of time doing very, very, very small things for very, very little progress.
Right.
Yeah. So we had, and I think it's just the way that life has kind of evolved, in that people want access to like instant gratification. They want to be able to log on. They want to be able to go, and that's why third-person shooters are so. It's like flavor of the month sort of thing, because people just want to be able to log on, shoot stuff, and then just log off sort of thing. Whereas Eve isn't like that. However, with NPSI it is.
Yeah, and I think that the key here, though, is that to say that people don't want that anymore, or to say that people only want content on the demand, is very reductionistic. The problem is actually the kind of things that attract somebody and the kind of things that keep somebody are actually two different things. That person who's just trying to get into it, they want the answers right now. They want to be able to get into something, to be able to have fun as fast as possible and as easy as possible. However, once comfortable, they're going to want to have something deep and interesting that they can dig deeper in. Okay, now I've got it. Can I do it well? Right? So there's a transition point there, and you can't treat one person like the other, because you'll either overwhelm that new player or you'll bore the experienced player.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it, I would say personally, And I actually, I mean, it's a shame actually, because I actually did a presentation at Fanfest, and it hasn't hit YouTube because they've had some technical issues with it. So I'm a bit annoyed about it, because obviously a lot of what we're talking about is kind of actually covered in that, in all fairness.
Fair enough.
So in reality, it's like, why MPSI, for example, it takes people out of their comfort zones, and when you take somebody out of their comfort zone, it exposes them to something that they're scared of. They're scared of failure. They're scared of a variety of things. But once you get them past that failure, that concern, they start to learn, and develop, and so on and so forth. So it's really why MPSI is like, it helps you to learn, it helps you to grow, develop, and so on.
Right. Okay. So, FanFest keynote. Obviously, I think I don't know anybody who's willing to stand up and argue that that was like a well-constructed, incredibly well-performed keynote. That's not my point. But of the stuff the actual things that were discussed in both the keynote and Living Universe, like the stuff that was announced at FanFest, do you think that it's a good direction for them to go on, or do you feel like this is a mistake?
I think overall, I think there are certain aspects of it, certainly with like factional warfare as an example. I think that it's 8 years overdue. Probably even longer, actually, thinking about it. So I'm getting older. In terms of the other bits and bobs, I would say yes, it's in a good state, and I would say certainly with the customizations and so on and so forth. I know some people can sit on two sides of the fence. You're either for it or against it. I kind of think if somebody wants to do that with their ships, or wants to do that for their corp, or so on and so forth, then why not? That's just my personal perspective. I know some people are anti it, pro it, so on. Me personally, I think if people want to spend their money, it's a hobby at the end of the day. If they want to spend money, it's like you buy a set of golf clubs. You want to upgrade the golf clubs, and so on and so forth.
How do you feel about the new arc system, or the idea of the lore being more integrated into what's happening?
I'll be honest with you, the whole lore side, I haven't really kept in kind of touch with. So when I talk, if you were to talk about that or ask me, I probably wouldn't be the best person to kind of talk about.
That's fair, but
talk about that, if that makes sense.
Well, no, but that's actually exactly why I want your opinion about it, right? As a person that isn't into it, do you think that this is a correct thing to do, or do you think it's you don't want to be bothered with it? Which camp are you in?
I think, if I'm honest, I think it is needed, to the extent where it gives you the kind of the progression, if that's what they're going to actually get out of it, slash what's the word, if that's the end kind of goal. And I believe that is the kind of end goal that they're aiming for, although as you quite rightly said, it was quite thin, the keynotes, in all fairness, in comparison to prior years. I rationalised it in my mind at the time, that in the past it had been, how do I put this, all flashing lights and all fancy videos, and loads of noise, and basically I read it in my mind that it was that they didn't want us to blow our beans too early, kind of thing, and that was left for the next day.
Right. Well, also, and I've talked to some CCP people about this, so I know this is true. Like I guess the company line at this point about it all is that the problem is that the keynote is first and foremost an opportunity to go over what's happened. And at that point, it had been 4 years since the last FanFest. So they had a lot to go over that was the past. And ultimately, that's what a lot of people complained about, was that they just talked about the past and not what was going to be announced. They had, they talked about what was coming for like 10 to 20 minutes. But if you think about it, if the keynote was only an hour, that actually would kind of would have made sense. But the problem is not that they had too little to reveal. It's that they had too much work to do,
Yeah. I mean, I see what you mean. It's, obviously the ground that they had to cover in a first FanFest after 4 years. That's a bit I'm supposed to try saying that.
So, sorry, you had something to say about that?
No, I was just going to say it's obviously it was the first FanFest after 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
They perhaps dwelled on the last 4 years a bit too much, but to look forward, you've got to look back at what you've done, and they always do a kind of retrospective sort of thing. But them having to do like a 4 years retrospective of where the game had been, and so on and so forth. I can imagine it. It was needed, but perhaps there was too much of a bias towards the past and not actually looking towards the future.
Right. I also would suggest that perhaps they looked at the past without actually answering for the things that people are upset about the past very much.
Yeah, they looked at the past in isolation.
Right. Okay, so, but what was I going to go next with that? It just literally fell out of my head as I was looking.
You're getting to that sort of age like me, aren't you?
Yeah. So, let me think. Oh, I remember now. So, you've been in the game since 2004. You have basically not paused. You have been in this game for 18 years at this point. Is that correct? Minus 1 month.
Yeah, basically July 24, 2004.
Yeah. So why does a person who's been in the game for 18 years suddenly decide that they want to be in CSM?
I'll be honest with you. I often think the same thing myself, because, and I will actually, I'll answer it in as succinctly as I can. When I've played Eve, prior to starting the corporation that I'm obviously funding, I'd always been a passenger in the journey, if that makes sense. I'd always let other people do stuff. I'd always been the background person, waiting for the FC to log in, waiting for them to ask for a skirmisher, waiting for them to form a fleet, and so on and so forth. So at that point in time, it kind of got to about, I believe it's probably about 2014, there or thereabouts. And what we'd noticed in Agony was that our player count was diminishing. We hadn't evolved. To our recruitment policies. We hadn't kind of really. We'd done NPSI to the extent of the classes, but we hadn't embraced it as fully by offering a more regimented kind of structured regime of fleets and content and so on. It's like every 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever. And so what I'd noticed was that basically corp numbers were dwindling. I eventually got promoted up to assistant director, so I was actually running a lot of stuff outside within the corp, like ship replacement. We called it the ship shop, like chip shop, and so that people could have ships on demand.
Don't say that too fast.
Ship shop, yeah, I know. And I think it's probably done deliberately, in all fairness. And so at that point in time, it was like, okay, so I've gone from being a line member, rolled up to like assistant director, and actually like creating content, running fleets, so on and so forth, doing recruitment, and numbers were still dwindling though. So we kind of ended up, it was a pretty hard decision. We shut the doors 2018, and I'll be honest with you, I was completely reluctant to quit Eve, because for one, it's the only game that I play, and for two, I didn't want to stop, basically, if I'm entirely honest. So I basically said to myself, right, I've got 2 avenues here. I can quit, I don't want to, or I can start my own corp. So I literally, April 2018, I was actually in Cuba. I was on holiday and thinking about internet spaceships. How bizarre. And that was when I kind of went, right, no, I'm doing this. And that's when I set up the corp. When I came back, and I had it on a 3-month roll with the kind of mindset of, right, I'm going to give it 3 months, try and get some recruits, give it another 3 months, get some more recruits, and see, just reevaluate every 3 months. And I remember I did a little, like, it's probably on a post-it note, to be honest. I did like a little roadmap where I wanted to be, what I wanted to do, and so on and so forth. And I haven't looked back since, if I'm honest. Set up the corporation. I kind of set up the corporation with the idea of opening our roams up as a recruitment tool. So saying to people, here, we're recruiting, come and fly with us and see what we like. And it kind of snowballed slightly because people actually ended up coming onto the fleets as friends. They didn't necessarily join the corp, or they did join the corp eventually. So we kind of called it our friend status. It's like friends with benefits kind of thing. And so basically at that point in time, sorry, somebody just pinged me on Discord. At that point in time, we started running the NPSI fleets, and it kind of just snowballed from there.
All right.
And I've actually completely lost my train of thought as you did.
We're working our way towards why you ran for the CSM this year.
Running for CSM, right? So inadvertently, basically, what I actually found was I actually really enjoyed it. I enjoyed running the corp. I enjoyed running the NPSI community, and I enjoyed running the alliance. Roll back sort of 18 months, back at sort of February, March last year, I believe it was February last year. We were advertising all of our fleets via the Spectre Fleet Discord. So there's like all of the groups that were running their sort of public content, so the NPSI content. Spectre Fleet, they pulled the plug, unfortunately. Completely respect their reasons why. It was the wrong thing to do in terms of the community, because it meant that there was people that didn't have access to the content and so on and so forth, and didn't have the visibility. And so I set up the NPSI calendar, and it's kind of since then that I've actually thought, well, hang on a sec, this is a fantastic resource, this is a fantastic community. We need to safeguard that community. So in effect, the reason why I'm standing for a CSM is to safeguard the community that I love. And I do mean that. I've made some lifelong friends. Some of them I've known for 15, 16, 17 years now, 16 years. And I do consider them friends. They're not just a pink splodge, purple splodge in a fleet. They're actually like genuinely people that I can reach out to if I'm struggling, so on and so forth. And they're actually genuinely people that I care for.
Does CCP do enough for the NPSI community?
Do you know what? If you'd have asked me that 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I probably would have said no. However, I think they've finally cottoned on to the fact that it's actually quite an important area. Fun Inc., we're running sort of 3 fleets a week. Spectre Fleet, probably a fleet every day. Bombers Bar, ad hoc content going throughout. I mean, I'm just literally looking at Discord. We've just killed a Kronos somewhere, so fair play to the guys. So my point is that, in effect, in the past they didn't. More recently, they are. They're giving us airtime in terms of myself, obviously doing the presentation at FanFest. I also got interviewed by CCP Go and Convict live on the stream on, I think it was day 2, about 2:00 in the afternoon. I was massively hungover, and they are showcasing us. If you go to CCP stream, type in !NPSI, the calendar that I set up comes up as a link.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, exactly. So it's, I mean, in my eyes, they are finally coming around to the importance of it. It's a fragile. The NPSI community. I've said it a couple of times already. It's a fragile and precious place. If we lose the NPSI community, or if stuff is done to not safeguard its future, it's going to implode and disappear, and you're going to lose people that literally just that's all they log on for. They purely log on. They are NPSI players. There's guys in the alliance that I literally that's all they do. Right. I'm assuming they plex their account.
It's a big community.
Exactly. I mean, look on Discord for Bombers Bar, like 6,000, 7,000 people. Look on Spectre Fleet's Discord, 7,000 people, nearly 2,000 on ours. I mean, straight away, there's going to be some overlap, of course, but let's face it, that's going to be 6,000, 5,000 people, 6,000 people. Now, half of them are spies, probably, but at the end of the day, that's still 2,500 even if you have it.
A spy is just a person that hasn't decided their loyalty yet.
Well, exactly. They're just not in fleet.
so, but like visibility is great and all, but like let's play a little thought experiment. You've made it onto the CSM. The council of CCP comes before you and says, okay, what does the NPSI community need right now?
Right. It's another good question. You can tell you've done your homework. I would say from my perspective and from the chatter, basically on our Discord channel, I've set up a couple of channels, one for discussions, one for ideas. And what I've done is over the last couple of weeks since the announcement is just basically just letting people just chat and just leaving them to it and let the thoughts flow and so on and so forth. Now, 100%, well, I'm not going to say 100% of people. There's a hell of a lot of people that basically want to see a degree of local to be reimagined. And I say reimagined. I don't want to get rid of it. I don't want blackout. I've put it in my thread, some of the summary points and so on and so forth. Now, in real terms, local is a chat channel, but it's not a chat channel. It's an intelligence tool. And it should never have developed as a intelligence tool.
Are you copying my homework?
No.
This is like literally not only one of my biggest crusades, but my entire point. Like as a former Cav Scout in the military, like the idea of intelligence and the acquisition of intelligence and the power of intelligence is the thing that got me into EVE. And one of the things that bothered me the most about not just Blackout, but the changeover of the chat system when they changed it over to the new system and it was so unreliable and people got super mad, like that to me showed me that something was horribly, horribly wrong, because you should not feel like your game is over because you can't talk in general chat for a few minutes, right?
Exactly.
That is not the way this is supposed to be. And in the same way that we've kind of covered up the fact that we don't have a sufficient enough newbie experience to teach newbies, in the same way, having local be a good enough solution for Intel has just made it so that CCP does not design an actual Intel system. And that's what I would prefer.
Do you know what? I'll be honest with you. The very, very first corp I was in before Agony, it was a corp called Ghost in the Machine, and we were DSR pilots. Now, you probably don't even... You might actually, having said that, you might know what DSR pilots are. Deep Space Recon.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
There you go. So it was literally what we were doing is we would provide forward scout intelligence to alliances, and we would basically go into a system and stay in that system and report what goes in, what comes out, and the movements and hostile movements, so on and so forth, just to give the actual recon back, and it would be all time date stamped and so on and so forth. It wasn't, obviously it's not the most glamorous of things, sat there in local doing nothing basically waiting for somebody to move on, but again it's an actual tool, and it was like I don't want to say proper work, but you know what I mean. It was, in terms of like sitting in local, it's not the most glamorous of things, sort of thing. Well, where I'm going,
sorry, well, yeah, I mean, you say that, but I mean, one of my earliest memories was when I moved to Null Sec as a brand new player. I couldn't do shit as a brand new player in Null Sec in 2010, but I could eventually, like the first T2 I trained to was the Anathema. But even before that, I would go with my shitty T1 exploration with my cloak on it, and I sat on top of the gate that led into our little pocket for 4 hours, and I reported every single thing I saw. And it may not seem glamorous, but let me tell you, it is useful, and people notice it if you do it right.
Exactly. And that's exactly what we were basically. I'm not going to say that we were like hired or anything like that, but that's basically what we did. And I loved it because it gave me a sense of I don't want to say, you gave me a sense of purpose in terms of this is not, it's a soft skill in terms of the game, sitting cloaked off a station or gate or whatever. But it's understanding the movements of people and understanding people's their routines in a way. Now, where I was going with this is that I think it just needs to be just reimagined in some extent. Now, I'm not saying get rid of it. I'm not saying like blackout or anything like that, because I understand that the flip side of it is that you have the null seckers that are out doing their ratting, their mining, and so on and so forth, and they're just gonna like rip up the subscription, aren't they? I mean, so they're clearly not going to like it if you get rid of local. So clearly it needs to balance accordingly for both parties. So you've got small gang roamers that can go out small gang roaming and still get content, but also have the ability for the crabbers, the ratters, the miners, missioners, whatever, to get their ISK and to get their ores and so on and so forth. So for me, we've had loads of discussion on Discord about this, and rather than looking at something that it basically needs to be fit for purpose, something which it basically, is denying content at the moment. I see local. Somebody logs off as soon as, or docks up as soon as you go into local. It doesn't allow for any opportunity for those skirmishers to actually hunt those people down.
All right, we're going to play a little game, okay? I'm going to pitch you my solution, and you're going to tell me what part of it is dumb and how you would fix it. How about that? That's going to be the game.
Right, so the question is, do you know the dumb parts already, and I have to fill?
No. What I'm saying is, I'm going to give you my honest pitch, but I want you to take it from the angle of you are on the CSM. This is CCP pitching it to you, so you need to figure out what's wrong with it and get it corrected. Because nobody needs like, oh yeah, yay, it's all great. So okay.
And put it this way, there's no right or wrong answer because we've ended up with the local that we've got now.
Right, exactly. But this is just a thought experiment. Okay, so first and foremost, local, as it were, becomes constellation based. So that way you can still have your chat channel, but now it is based on constellation, which is your near field communication. You can only see who's in constellation with you. You'd be able to see who's involved in a sob battle, for example, but not necessarily know who's exactly in the system with you. Introduce a new structure that is a deployable anywhere in space that sits on a grid and reports back everything that happens on that grid. You can maybe configure it to look for certain things or have alerts. And then have a new UI that allows a security officer within an organization that owns those structures to be able to pull up that UI to look at them like security cameras and read reports. And finally, have it so that a certain ship, let's call it recons, can't be detected by these ships, by these towers, and can hack these towers to bring them offline, giving the owner only the information of who did the hacking. Why is this a bad idea?
Right. I'll be honest with you. Constellation, I agree with, to the extent where I'd actually thought of a very, very similar sort of methodology, for want of a better expression.
Okay.
In terms of the intelligence officer being able to get the information, where that's going to fall down is that not everybody will have that role. So you either end up giving it to one person who's never online, or you give it to everybody. So I think that would be a negative thing. Would it be a negative thing, everybody having access to it? Yeah, that probably would be a negative thing.
I think that's an interesting puzzle about trust for you to have to sort out.
Yeah, exactly. And do you know what? That's a fair point in terms of trust-based mechanics, like the old POS system, so on and so forth.
You could have it so that you can set alerts that get broadcasted to everyone, and then have the security officer be able to read logs and get the full reports.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'd say there's definitely validity in it.
Well, you've already improved it once, so you've already passed my test, but you can keep going. Excellent. If you want.
I mean, I would personally say constellation based, yes, I agree with. Structure or item, yes. Could it be boosted, for example? Could it be, I don't know how. I mean, one of the kind of discussions that I'd had was about having something very, very similar, but it would be by default you wouldn't appear in local straight away when you take the gate. Once you're in system, you would have 30 seconds. Now, that 30 seconds will allow hunters to get out, and so on and so forth. You can still maintain your cloak. You won't be on scan, so on and so forth. You can't deploy probes, obviously, because you're cloaked. But there would be some methodology of the locals, so the whoever has that server or whatnot, to actually push the timer down. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And by hostile actions, the hostiles could push that up. So there'd be like, I don't want to say a beacon or something. They could deploy something themselves which has a 5% incremental per minute or something for 10 minutes. So it changes the local.
You want to combine this with Constellation?
Yes and no. I mean, okay. Personally, I was thinking at a local level. However, Constellation would make sense.
Well, I guess, isn't that solution just, isn't that still accepting local as an intelligence tool, though?
Until such time, and how do I put this? I know that when you were speaking to Dutch earlier on, until such time they fix it or get rid of it or come up with an alternative solution, I think we're going to stay with local. I
Right.
can't perceive that will be the alternatives are blackout, or the alternatives are Thera/Pochven, kind of Pochven, depending on how you pronounce it, kind of style local.
So basically what I'm hearing is that while you like the bigger idea, you're also trying to propose this as kind of a reasonable idea. This is something that could be done by somebody in their 20% time if you could just find the right dev.
This is a reasonable adjustment to a system which doesn't work for small gangers and anybody entering local. Botters, for example, straight away, it's, if you adjust the local mechanisms, I'm assuming, because the bots aren't reading local, so on and so forth. I don't know how the bots work and so on and so forth, but I think that's how they work from what people have said. That in effect, you're then breaking that cycle in a way, or part of that cycle, a very, very small part of that cycle, because you're allowing that person the extra time to get into local and get on their D-scan and see if there's anything, within 14, whatnot. I'm not an I'll be straight. I'm not an advocate of getting rid of local. I think it needs to remain, but it needs to be reimagined in some variety of things. A lot of the things that I've mentioned, actually, like the antiplexes, the structure quantities, not volumes, the number of structures as well, obviously in Null. These are all things that I just think need to be reworked, or to remove the balance of power, because I do believe there is a balance of power when you've already got like a null solve block with hundreds of members, and you're talking about a fleet of 20, 30 or 40 people coming in raiding. I mean, why are they, pardon the French, why are they shitting the bed over us? I mean, why are they having to dock up? If their only mechanism for getting safe is to dock up, that's insane.
Right. Well,
it stifles content, basically, in my eyes. The having local, basically.
Right. The other thing about my idea that I like is that now you can actually put these towers anywhere. You want to be able to see everybody who comes through Jita. You want to be able to see, you get what I'm saying? Like, you could actually put towers in different places and look for different things. And people can destroy them.
Exactly, and there are certain choke points you'd be able to, watch people coming and going and so forth. That absolutely, that would make reconnaissance, like proper recon, a valid thing again, because it's dead. I mean, that's what I did in the first probably about 18 months. That's all I did, was just live in a rapier. That's all I lived in.
I remember when I first joined, like, it was like I still didn't even understand how to, I wasn't very good at fleets. I couldn't fight with everybody as well. I got my prophecy killed because I got caught in the bubble when everybody else didn't. But I could scout, right? I could apply my knowledge as a scout to the point where the FC, I remember this Null Sec FC was like, oh my God, you're great. I always want you to be my scout. And that was it, man. I felt like I bought into that. I bid it hard, and I wanted that again. I wanted to make every FC that I worked for be like amazing. And then a few years later in my corp, I was like, oh yeah, I'll scout. And it's like, oh, no, I use an alt. And I was just like...
And do you know what? I've just seen a comment from Ragnarok, actually, and I'll just address that. I completely agree. By I don't want to say nerfing local, by reimagining local. That's what I'm going to say, reimagining local. I'm not going to say nerf it or get rid of it or anything like that.
Nerfing implies that it's designed. It's an accident that it is the way it is.
Exactly. This completely, and by design, locally as a chat channel, that is nothing more. If it's ended up as an intelligence tool, that's like using a cricket bat as a bottle opener or a baseball bat as a bottle opener. It's not designed for that purpose, but it does work.
Right. And if all you ever had was bottles, then you might think that that's the way that baseball works.
Exactly. There you go.
So,
now,
but just bottles, your bat breaking is just, that's just part of baseball.
Exactly. But one of the things I was actually going to say was, and he's mentioned, Ragnarok's actually mentioned about what is the risk reward profile. Now, what I would say is you need to, in some degree, there needs to be a greater reward for null sec ratters, but with that, there needs to be a greater risk. By introducing the greater reward, the greater risk comes by a reimagined local. So they get more money for their ratting, their mining, or whatever they're doing, but by association, they need to lose local in some degree or reimagine it in some degree so that the reward they're actually getting for that ratting is worth the risk. And sorry.
The implication or the use of local, the effective use of local, especially at a broader scale like a lot of coalitions do, is a big reason why the risk versus reward calculation for Null Sec breaks.
Exactly, and that's actually one of the things I acknowledge that you're not going to get rid of local as it stands currently, and because people will just not rat and they will just quit the game. The people that just want to sit on a bundle of ISK in Null Sec and go all Mr. Scrooge and like that, it's or Mr. Burns or whatever it is. That will kill the game for them, and I don't want. Do you know what? I don't want people to leave by changes. I want people to adapt to the changes. It's adapt or die, basically. And do you know what? Let's be realistic. For me to kill somebody, there's got to be people to kill.
It's true. But if you're going to have an adapt or die attitude, you're going to have to accept that a certain percentage of people will die.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, but you need to reward them in the process. I don't mean reward them for dying, but you need to reward them to maintain them actually staying on the field.
To stay on the adapt side?
Exactly. To stay on the adapt side.
Incentivize adaptation.
Yeah, exactly. It's not
it can't just be adapt so you can continue to be in this game that likes to fuck with you.
Yeah, completely. At the end of the day, if they're going to be out ratting, they've got to acknowledge that there has to be a degree of risk in that. If it's a riskless society in terms of Null Sec, what's the point?
Right. So I think that honestly, when it comes to this, the biggest mistake that CCP made was when there was that disruption, when they did the transfer and everybody was super mad. I think that rather than accepting the premise that the player base was coming at them with, they should have just doubled down. They should have been like, congratulations, the Triglavians have now disrupted local. You can have local, but now it's unreliable. Every once in a while, it just doesn't work, right? So most of the time, 90% of the time, it's absolutely accurate and works. But, every once in a while it doesn't. And sometimes you can tell if you're paying attention whether or not it is or isn't working. Some of the times you can't. Not every tool is reliable.
Yeah, exactly. It's I think in terms of reliability and in terms of how local's used, I don't think it's fit for purpose anymore. But we're not going to get rid of it. It's not going to get rid of until they've got a suitable alternative. Once they get a suitable alternative, that's when the CSM needs to step up and look at it from every angle. So look at the guy who's the Null Sec, Null block candidate who likes, doing his ratting and missioning and so on and so forth in Null Sec under the security of the umbrella. You could look at look at myself as an NPSI FC and community, representative to see how it will, how the different possibilities can be developed, and so that everybody's happy. I know everybody's not going to be happy, but there's going to have to be some degree of balance across the board. Stuff can get rebalanced. How many times have we seen stuff get delivered to TQ that then 2 weeks later, or actually no, let's pull that back, or let's just remove that, or let's slide that. Look, that didn't happen kind of situation. It's
they have gotten a lot better at iteration in the last couple of years.
Yes, and that is down to the QAs guys. And you know what? Fair play to the guys. They've got an absolute uphill battle. There's however many thousand people that play this game, and let's be realistic, we're quite demanding. This change we didn't like, but this change, when actually that should be the thing that we like, we don't like. It's like, we're quite a fickle bunch.
Yeah, I do want to respond to people reacting to what I just said in chat a little bit and maybe get your thoughts on it. But on the subject of that's how local works now, in the fact that it does go wrong, right? My point was that CCP should actually have just told us that it's diegetically true, that local just doesn't work sometimes, rather than having it be something that they effectively now have promised would work that is not working. You get what I'm saying? And as Nth Dimensional points out, that unreliable tools are terrible considering the game itself is unreliable a lot of times. The point there is that no intel tool should be perfect. That way you have to have multiple forms of intel.
Yeah, I mean, you could even take it to the degree of, certain skills allow you certain delays to local. make them as long skill queues,
Yeah.
per level, an extra 3 seconds or 5 seconds or 2 seconds, whatever it might be. Numbers are demonstrative, and there's bound to be somebody that will say, no, that will not work because of this, this, and this, and that's a fair point. I mean, go. I mean, the next thing I was actually going to say, because I've literally got a crib list of here things I remember them, is the antiplex systems. It just needs to be reworked in some manner. Our Discord channel's been absolutely going absolutely nuts. Yeah, exactly. It's just basically, been going absolutely mad with people chatting about antiplex systems and the jump gates basically to get them reworked in some degree.
Are they too strong or too weak?
Oh, they're too strong. Absolutely too strong. What you've got to understand is that the type of fleet that I run will be 20 or 30 people, hit and run, take a filament or take Thera. We end up in a Null Sec region, dead end system, and we go out hunting for content. So it might be miners, might be missioners, so on and so forth. Invariably, we get a mixture of both. Sometimes we'll land on a mining fleet, sometimes we'll land on a raw call, we'll take the engagement. When the Clarion call comes, you've got 2 regions away as their staging system, and within 5 minutes they're there with 50 men camping us in the system, and they're like smack talking us, saying, come into us. It's just like, well, no, I'm in 20 raptors or 30 raptors, and you're wanting us to go into got hick bubbles up, and you've got 20 or 30 or 40 like dudes in local. Like, for one, I'm not stupid. For two, I value my my KPIs. I ask for fleet feedback at the end of every fleet, so I don't want to throw people away at the end of the day,
right?
Or at the start of the day even. And now I'm not going to take that fight. I'm just going to literally just cock block them and take a filament and get out.
Right.
Do you know what? And that just about demonstrates the power of it. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying get rid of antiplexes. If you have Sov in that space, you've earned it. So therefore, you should put the infrastructure in place to make it your home. If you want to move from A to B to C to D and cut out B and C and go A to D, job done. To put 2 antiplexes in. However, it shouldn't stifle content. It shouldn't stop organic fights from happening. Now, I mean organic fights by you catch a person and then they bring their mate to come and then I mean we had somebody the other day. We caught Harbinger on gate. This was it, and his mate came down in a Kronos. The Harbinger got away. We killed the Kronos.
Weird things happen, man. One day, in Fleet, we just got a report that there's a rattlesnake gating. So it's like, whatever, fine, let's go do that. Yeah, exactly. I'm not going to ask any questions until it's dead. No. Shoot again. I had a thing and then I did. A pitch for you. What were you just saying that I just jumped into?
I was talking about antiplexes.
Right. So here's my pitch for Ancillabixes. We'll play that game again. I'm interested to see your reaction to this. So, actually, take a step back. Filaments, first of all, since you just mentioned those.
Yep.
What would you say to a 30-second filament spool up?
Ooh, yeah, I like that. So,
okay.
You mean before?
So, being the person that's escaping with a filament, you'd be perfectly okay with there being a 30-second spool up before you escape?
Yeah. We've, I think somebody in chat link that we've got a classic one that literally somebody had dropped fleet but not told us. So I'm like, who's not in fleet? Who's not in fleet? And I'm trying to activate the filament. Literally, the filament fires as a hostile fleet lands on us. It was literally. I mean, that was. So
you're saying that you should not have gotten away there in this?
Oh no,
it would have been okay.
Not.
Okay,
absolutely not. I wouldn't have been okay with it. I would have been pissed off with it. But
sure. This is bullshit.
Them's the breaks. I would have been like, yeah, shit. Who wasn't in fleet? That would have been down to me as the FC, though. I should have checked who was in fleet, who was still active, so on and so forth. I should have. That's my bad. However, I would have basically whelped the whole fleet.
Okay, so now for the Ancillabix one, and I will say, I don't mean to pitch other CSM candidates, but this was more of a collection of CSM candidates. I was watching Pando's stream where he had four of them, and from that there kind of came an idea that I advanced further. But what would you say to the idea that hick points can be used to shut off Ancillabix jump gates and Sino beacons, so that way you could actually cut off a system from their normal reliable network?
Yes, but when you say cut off, do you mean that they can't take it at all?
They have to now travel to that that gate is gone. They either have a defender already there because they're securing their route, or they now have to move somebody there to take care of you.
Right. Two things. You got to get the hick in there. You won't get it in there, as in into the region. You'll just get cock blocked again. Until actually
that's the fleet's problem.
Well, no, exactly. That's a fair point. I mean, I don't know about that. I think possibly, maybe. I mean, I think there are other mechanisms possibly that would be, I don't want to say better, but more viable, but less requiring you to be there to do that. I get what you mean by using that. I'm just trying to think, would that work or not?
I just want to be a small group to be able to disrupt the jump bridges in a reasonable manner. Reinforcing it takes too long, and it's too reactable.
I mean that could work to the extent whereby, I mean, for one, you'd have to have a hick in fleet, obviously.
Well, yeah.
And hicks aren't. I'm with the type of PvP that we do. They're not. It wouldn't.
Well, yeah, you'd have to bring it with intent. That's part of the point.
You would have to bring it with intent. Right. Now, we have discussed bringing hicks with some of the fleets that we've always ruled it out.
Well, yeah, because you couldn't shut off the intelligence.
Exactly. Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah, there is that. No, I mean it's a valid idea. I mean,
fair enough.
Yeah,
I really like your reaction because I know I can tell that you like it, but you also have the kind of conservative reaction of somebody that's like, that's a big suggestion. I'm not going to jump behind it right now 100%. There's probably, it's like back to the previous one. I'm sure that there's something dumb about this plan, but we haven't really found it yet. It's not that it's a bad plan, but we got to find the dumb pieces and fix them first.
And I think in all fairness, it's probably, I mean, I get the rationale behind the use of a hick, but is it the most appropriate ship? Because and I suppose in all fairness, it probably is, thinking about it. But it's not something. Certainly, it's not something that I use in the fleets that we run, and I know certainly the wider NPSI groups and whatnot, they don't use hicks; they use traditional dictators.
Well, I'll be straight up. I'm trying to avoid it being an Entosis link. Okay, so let's work together here on this one.
I can see the obvious. I mean, I think I'd need to find it, but we had a variety of suggestions. Let me just find.
Also, we are getting to the end, so if you want if there's anything that we haven't covered yet that you want to reinforce or go back to or whatever, absolutely, now's an opportunity to.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I mean, I'll just find this little bit that I was trying to find. Can't find it. I can't find it. If we just had a variety of ideas about antiplexes, having like a maintenance fee, having like a fatigue, for want of a better expression. Yeah. I know a lot of people are kind of pro fatigue or anti-fatigue, depending on which side of the fence you look at. It's quite funny actually, when you just anecdotally, and you probably would have noticed this, is that when you look at the people that are actually talking about antiplexes, it's the people going into the hostile system that want to adjust the antiplexes to an extent, and it's the people that live in the system that don't want the antiplexes. So you can just tell that, because the balance of power is towards the null block in terms of it. I think it's overpowered. That they don't want to change it because they know how overpowered it is, and so that speaks volumes in my mind.
Yeah, the thing that bothers me about like the whole jump fatigue or limiting how many of them can be in a constellation or any of those kinds of solutions is that, like, well, a lot of people agree that Incelivixes are overpowered in their impact in the game. I don't think that that's questionable. But I feel like the way that this problem should be solved is not by making Incelivixes less reliable or make them not want to use them as much or whatever, but rather making it so that other players can disturb them easier. Because I want a major block to be relying on their thing and then not have proper security, so that way a small gang of like 20 people can literally cut off a group at the key point in time that, you know, they can go in there, kill the guard, turn off the gate, and now Imperium's stuck there, you know, or whoever, not being able to move the way that they expected to. If you just simply nerf it, then people will just readjust their calculations to account for that. You only really get there by allowing it to be players that disrupt it.
Okay, what about this then? Start of 10 on something. We're being like organic chatting here. Anchor system, anchor structure next door to the Antiplex or within 1,500 kilometers, 1,000 kilometers, whatever. And it's got, say, 15-minute anchor time. Once it's anchored, that Antiplex network won't work. And what I mean by that, the whole network. You know, so it takes all of the Antiplexes down.
Well, what is a network?
Well, all of the Antiplexes associated to that, I suppose, soft space or corporation alliance.
Because that's I mean, like, that could just affect things way out of.
That would be brilliant.
But
it would be brilliant for us, but it'd be shit for them.
They're not linked together because you only have one in a system.
Yeah,
so
no, I know.
It'd be difficult to figure out the entire chain. I think that timing is important, especially if you're going to be. This is about making a small group be able to have an impact against a big group if they are, you know, if they do it right. Right? At that point, they can actually change the course of a war by cutting off reinforcements to a fight.
Yeah, and do you know what? That's actually one of the things years and years back with Agony. What we used to do was like guerrilla warfare. So we used to do, don't want to say like contracts or anything like that, but we used to be the small corp acting within an alliance, but we would go out and just disrupt proceedings, and that's one of the things that I would like to see more to happen in SOV space. It is the big boys against the little boys, but sometimes the little boys can like kick you in the shins and then gouge your eyes out.
So it's being suggested in chat that it should be a hacking thing, that you can shut it off and on with hacking. My problem with that is that, like, the reason why I went with a hick and not a structure too is because the solution to fix it is very easily. You just have to push the hick off, right? You just have to make the hick have to disengage, and instantly it's back on again. Now, with the hacking thing, though, what you could do is, like, say, well, every time you successfully hack it, it shuts it off for 1 minute.
Yeah, and
so
I
you
think
can just continually hack it to keep it offline.
Yeah, so you'd have somebody there as just a hack it, and then just get off grid as and when hostiles land.
Right.
They then reset the, reset the Antiplex, and job done.
Yeah. Either way, I think that would work. But I think that we agree that it's an interesting thing to explore, and you are a really good guy to explore it with. And as you were pointing out, big blocks have a pretty strong bias in this.
Yes.
So while I'm a strong advocate in the fact that the CSM is not the only avenue for CCP to get information or whatever, it is absolutely true that if all of them are in agreement about something, it's very easy for them to present one side as being the correct side. And so having somebody who will speak the other side of that equation at the table, I think, will help add the correct amount of nuance that this particular feature requires. Not for everything, obviously, but this one in particular, or a few of these that we've talked about in particular, I think are important for that fact, because we don't want the whole there's less wormhole connections to Null Sec now again, situation again, right? We need the CSM to be able to give effective, even if biased, feedback to CCP, but it cannot be one-sided, and it especially cannot be one-sided on these kinds of topics, because these are the things that they will fight for.
Yeah, and you know what? The people, how do I put this? You've got to look at the split of players and their I don't mean localizations in terms of geographically worldwide. I mean localizations within EVE. Are they null sec? Are they high sec, low sec, factual warfare, wormhole? So on and so forth. Poshon, obviously. And you have to look at the volume of people that live in each of those areas. They'll vote with their feet if it's wrong. And do you know what? We have to safeguard that. And that's, as, a CSM candidate, that's what we need to ensure, ensure our due diligence moving forward in terms of any decisions, in terms of any content that is presented.
Well said. All right. Ready?
Thank you.
The most important question. Cat ears, yes or no?
Kick ass.
All right. Whew.
Personally, yes. It goes back to what I said about the ship skins and that kind of ilk. If it's a hobby at the end of the day, if you want to buy a new pair of golf shoes or buy a new pair of golf clubs, why the devil wouldn't you? It's the same with cat ears.
Ironically enough, that's very reminiscent of the original argument that CCP made in the early cash shop days with Fearless and all that stuff, because it was the idea of like, well, the reason why they came out with the cosmetic shop to begin with is because people want to invest in their own hobby. They want to feel, it may seem like a cash grab to put in, $10 pants, but there are people that love their hobby and so actually like the fact that they have they've been able to invest in this super cool, thing. In a more practical way, I've purchased emotes in Final Fantasy XIV, and those both make Final Fantasy XIV and those emotes more special to me, even if it's only in a small way.
Yep.
I want to be, putting your logo on shirts, all this kind of stuff, right? This is how we invest deeper. And that, I think, is kind of the theme of our entire conversation, which is like, how do we make people comfortable now, but desire to invest later over time? Or invest deeper over time.
Yeah, and do you know what?
Invest deeper.
If people do invest, words difficult. If people do invest and then stay with the game, you're going to get a spike of people. You're going to get an increase in people, and there's going to be more people online. There's going to be more people generating money for the economy, more people generating kills. There's going to be more people needing ships. There's going to be more. So it's a self-perpetuating kind of scenario. Years back it was like FC doesn't log on. Okay, there's no fleet, so nobody logs in because the FC's not logged on,
right.
And everybody then bitches and moans that the FC's not on and that there's no fleets. So it's self-perfect.
It's a critical mass issue for sure.
Exactly. So if you get one FC log on, you'll get a couple of fleet members log on, and then straight away before you know you've got 4 people. That's a little Pico gang, a little small gang. You can nip around factional warfare, go out Null Sec. I mean, like I sort of said at the start, I've got best part of 1,000 kills myself. That's solo kills. Why would you not just do that? Why would you not embrace that potential? And you know what? I'll be honest with you, it's completely wrong of me to sit here and say, why would you not do something that motivates you? And why would you not undock? And why would you, does that sort of make sense?
Yeah. Well, yeah. Like, if we agree that this is a sandbox should not be defined by telling people that they can't do something. Whether it's working for the factions or having cat ears, right? If I want to, like, by not having an engageable PvE or by not having these things, you're just making it less of a sandbox for me. Awesome. Well,
yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree.
I think on that note, I think that probably pulls together a lot of what we've talked about so far. So I think that's pretty good there. I think that you have a very strong candidacy. I think that there's the NPSI community is extraordinarily important because in a game, you answered this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to finish with my answer about it. In a game in which social connections are so important, and yet trusting social groups is so difficult, there's a reason why NPSI is popular. There's a reason why NPSI is popular, because it allows you to, at least on some level, a la carte your game. You no longer have to have your allegiance have to do with your activity today. Your activity today doesn't have to do with your activity tomorrow. And you know what? That's it. It's not about, whether, one thing or not. It's whether or not you can engage with the thing you want to engage with without having to put up with too much bullshit. And that's exactly you, man. And I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you running for the CSM, and best of luck to you.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much for having me. And I hope if anybody's got any questions, like just ping me on Discord. Just Google like Funink, and you'll get our Discord. Just hit me up if you want to talk about anything. You know where I am. And thank you for watching.
Absolutely, and once again, thank you, and thank you all for watching. If you're on YouTube, before you leave, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. You can ask questions in the comments below, or go to his forum post, which is linked in the doobly-doo down below. And if he gives me the information or I'll try to get the Discord information up, or he'll notice it and yell at me. So hopefully, if one of the two of us have done our job, the Discord link or his Discord ID will also be in the doobly-doo down below. If not, yell at me. Either way, in the comments. So, but all that said, if you are watching this on the playlist, just go ahead and hang tight. We're going to head on to the next one. But thank you guys for making it this far and becoming informed about this candidate, because having an informed electorate is what's really, really important here. Because the CSM is an incredibly useful tool to us, but it's only as good as we make it. And I think that that's something that we've proven in both directions in the last decade or so. So, it is important. Get out there and vote. The voting begins on the 7th. And that should just about wrap it up. So on behalf of Keacte,
vote Keacte CSM 17. Thank you.
And myself, thank you all for watching. And until next time, we'll see you in space. Although if you see him in space, you might want to run.